All right, good morning, Gator Nation. I'm Dylan Denmark. That is Graham Marsh on this episode of Denmark and Marsh. Remember to go to the 1010XL Gator page on Facebook and YouTube to like and subscribe for all the content for the Florida Gators, for not only us, but from Dan Hicken, Frank Frangie, and then Graham and Hacker on Friday. But that's not happening this Friday because Hacker's on a cruise. So this will be, I guess, the last episode that you'll see from content from that page for this week. Graham, we got some news to get to in the world of recruiting. Florida hasn't really been, on top of it, really. They've gotten 4 recruits so far in this class of 2026. Kaiden Hall, the safety from Milton, Florida. He's projected to be like right around 200 in the country overall, regardless of position. Committed to Florida, and this feels like this is the first big piece in the summer, because now is the time where Florida is going to start making a move along with everybody else. Graham, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Yeah, this is Billy Napier's kind of MO with recruiting, right? Normally in years past, it'll be June, July, and Florida will be, you'll go to 247, you'll go to Arrivals, you'll go to On3, wherever you like to, whatever rankings you prefer. And, this time of year, you'll go to scroll. You'll be like, where's Florida ranked? And you'll have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. And they'll be
in my case, you have to hit load more and then scroll some more.
Yeah, load more. That's a 247 thing.
Yes.
50, you hit load more, whatever. But yeah, in Florida, there's some they're ranked in some preposterous ranking, and they're next to Appalachian State and Troy or something. And and if you're one of those people that gets nervous quickly, then the sky is falling when you see that. In all reality, there's vast majority of these guys are either A, not committed, the blue chip guys, the 4 or 5 star level guys that we're really talking about here. They're either A, not committed at this time, or B, they're committed to somewhere. But Dylan, if somebody's committed verbally somewhere in June, what does that mean? That means absolutely nothing.
No. And Kaiden Hall did say he's shutting down his recruiting, but it's like, man, how many times have we heard that from a 17-year-old?
110% committed. Recruitment totally shut down. 2 months later, they're committed somewhere else. Whatever. So everyone who loves college football enough to consume this podcast, they know exactly what Dylan and I are talking about here. Look, the ranking number that Florida stands at is not something to get super concerned with until I'd say Dylan, about October, November, until you're about 30, 60 days away from early signing day, because we all know nowadays once early signing day hits, your class is probably about 90+% locked up at that point. You get other guys regular national signing day and stuff that kind of fill in, but the meat and potatoes of your class is going to be signed that early signing day. So look, we're really glad that the Gators got his commit, and obviously, like you just said, I agree with you. This is kind of how Napier rolls. It's normally kind of this time in the summer, they get one guy. And then Billy does the old Urban Meyer thing where he gets a lot of the silent commits, because it's always funny how he operates, man. Like, you'll wake up one day and Florida will just get like 4 commits in one day, and that's kind of always been how he rolls. And it's like, okay, those guys didn't all commit today, right? he kind of keeps them in the holster and says, hey, be on the hush hush. We're going to kind of launch this all at once to kind of build that, which is a smart strategy, by the way. I think that's a good way for coaches to go about it and kind of manufacture some extra momentum in the recruiting cycle. But look, I'm prepared to say this, Dylan. Tell me if you agree to bring this to a larger conversation. Billy Napier is a very good, if not great, recruiter. I'm prepared to say that. And he's shown that, I think, multiple classes over at this point. Now, has he ever had the number 1 class? No. Has he ever even had I don't think he's had a top 5 class. He might. Yeah, I don't think he's had a top 5 class. No. That I tend to believe has more to do with how they've been on the field in the fall. I think Billy Napier's ability to grab recruits and close and get them to commit is up there with the best coaches in America. I just think you're not going to start to see those top 5 classes until you start seeing more like top 5 finishes in the country, right? Or at least top 10. And then I think those will start to take care of itself. But, this is kind of recruiting season simply because it's not the regular season. But excited for them to get commits. Not going to treat it as the end-all, be-all either way.
Yeah, so Florida right now, 247, ranked 62. Here are a couple of teams right ahead of them. Duke, Miami of Ohio, Toledo, Dan Mullen's UNLV. I guess he's recruiting out there in Vegas. And you have Houston at 56. So, and another thing, too, with the way the landscape is now, I mean, you can look at the last 2 or 3 years. Most seniors in high school, they commit before they start their senior year of high school football. So here in the next couple of weeks, and Florida's projected, if you're really in the weeds of recruiting, I know Graham and we haven't really been on top of it as much this year as we have in years past. I think part of that with you, Graham, is you're married and you have other responsibilities. But the way the culture is now, you're going to see a lot of guys here commit. You're seeing a lot of guys now scheduling official visits in the month of June. And you're going to see them committing here in the next couple of weeks. So you're going to see them, Florida is going to creep. They're going to get into the 50s and 40s, and hopefully they can start getting, those guys, those difference makers, because we all know how recruiting is. DJ Lagway commits, and then all of the other guys that are like on the fence of Florida or not, they commit. And that's just how the game is. And then hopefully you can keep them and have them sign through signing day in December. And, someone doesn't come through with an odd godly number at the very end and snatch them away. So it'll be a wait and see. But, you're going to see a couple of guys recruiting or signing, verbally committing to Florida here in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, and we'll get excited, and that'll be great. And you're right. A lot of guys do commit before their senior season starts. A lot of guys don't always stick with that commitment before their senior season ends.
Yeah.
So the recruitment shuts down in, late July, early August before high school ball starts. But a funny thing happens in October, November, and December, like you said, Dylan, especially with NIL packages coming into play. But yeah, Dylan, last recruiting thing, because I know we want to move on to some other stuff. What are there, looking at the current roster and how it looks, and then also knowing certain positions that are a little bit older and going to have guys moving on soon, what are certain positions you're locked in on in recruiting to see how they fill those gaps for not this season but moving forward, obviously, because we're talking about 2026 guys?
Yeah, I'm always going to say that the meat up front in the lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I feel like we're young enough on the receiver side. I don't feel like Florida needs another receiver. Obviously, a running back. I know Florida's got Ball and Trayon Webb, and Jackson for that matter. But you always feel like you want a running back almost like every class, at least one. But yeah, mainly the offensive and defensive line. You can never get enough of those guys.
Especially because Florida's older on both sides of the ball there now.
Yes.
Which would be great for this year, but next year, I mean, one of the keys of the offseason for the Gators this past season is they kept everybody for the most part. They had a couple of guys here and there that like TJ Cersei's of the world and that kind of thing, but all kind of the main players that you would say at the end of last season, if you were to be asked, okay, who are the dudes that got to be back to make sure that Florida can build onto that next level? Who was it? It was Tyreek Sapp. It was Caleb Banks. It was TJ Slaughter. It was those guys are all back. And those
Austin
guys are
Barber.
Austin Barber, right? And you're talking upperclassmen players here. So those dudes are all back. They're not going to be back in the future. So you kind of got to replace those with the next crop. And they got guys on the roster now, I know, that are developing, obviously, but I would love to see this cycle. Can I get a 5-star O lineman, Dylan? Can I get a 5-star D line? Can I get a couple of those beefy, game-changing dudes on either side of the ball? Can I get a couple of brick walls on offense and a couple of dudes that can't be blocked on defense? Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, and another thing, I mean, all those guys we just listed, they're projected to either be, I mean, obviously it's way, way early, but they're projected to be first round picks for next year or day two guys, being the second or third round. So, after next season, you're going to be losing a lot. Now, it's going to look great this year, hopefully, especially the way they ended the season in the month of November. But you can never have enough of those guys. You can never have enough offensive linemen, and you can never have enough defensive linemen. Having guys come into your rotation, and if you look at any good team in the last history of football, I'll just say the last 20 years, it's what's made Georgia great and why they didn't dominate last year. It was why Alabama was great for 15 years with Nick Saban. They dominated lines of scrimmage, and you can rotate guys, and they had guys on the bench who were first round picks. Now it's not like that no more with NIL, but you can still mold those guys to, one day once they're hopefully, sophomores and juniors to be the guy eventually.
So I know you just put the comments up from our boy Carnell. Shout out Carnell for being up with us this morning. We appreciate you, bro. Bringing up tight end. Tight end is such an interesting position in college football recruiting. It's a little different in the NFL, but it's such an interesting position in college football recruiting because it's one of those positions done where if you look at the landscape of the sport, there's very few teams that have dominant tight ends in college football because there's very few dominant tight ends in college football in general, right? There's just very few human beings that come through that have the body type, the ability, and everything that comes with being a great tight end. It's just kind of a rare human being that is born and developed, right? That said, whenever a team does get their hands on one, they can't be stopped in college.
Every time.
Again, the league is different. The league, because some of those guys play defense in the league, and there's different ways to slow down tight ends potentially in the NFL. But I mean, look at, obviously kind of the obvious examples here in our area is obviously Brock Bowers, and he was at Georgia, and Pitts when he was in orange and blue. Like, no defense in college had an answer for those guys. So you look, do I think Amir Jackson is going to be Kyle Pitts? No, of course not. Or Hayden, and I like Hayden Hansen, but Hayden Hansen's not Aaron Hernandez. But, if you get the point of that, I know we were talking about recruiting initially, but I want to bring this into this season because I know we kind of want to get into that anyways. I think Hansen is what Hansen is, right? I think we know what he is, right? He's a good blocker and he can catch the ball when needed. And he's reliable, but he's never going to be, this game-changing dude, right? He's more like, 3rd and 3, I know I can rely on him to go get me 4 or 5, right? What if Amir Jackson is a beast and they get a really, really good tight end to go along with these receivers and backs? They'll be one of the best offenses in the country, right? They already might be one of the best offenses in the country.
Yeah, when you look at the speed from the receivers on the outside and what we are expecting them to be, if DJ Lagway can be healthy, PFF the other day had Florida as one of the top offensive lines in the country. The people that cover the SEC, like Cole Kublik, have Florida as one of the top running back rooms in the country. And then you add a tight end. That's lethal. That's because even look at Florida's history the last 20 years. I mean, you had Cornelius Ingram with Urban Meyer, who was insane. Then he hurt his knee, and then you had Aaron Hernandez, and then
Jordan Reed.
Jordan Reed was Trey Burton, him too. He was more of a utility at Florida.
Jordan Reed was more of a true tight end.
Yeah, Jordan Reed was a true tight end, and then
other than the times that he was playing quarterback.
Yeah, God. And then Kyle Pitts. So I mean, you look at those, throughout the years.
No mention of Arliss Boardingham, Dylan.
No, you paid almost $200 for Arliss Boardingham to catch one ball against Miami. Oh my God, I was thinking about that the other day, man.
You mean they don't call him Arliss Cornelius Ingram Boardingham?
Yeah. But
Arliss was a good player. No disrespect to him, and good, but best of luck to him. But I get what you're saying. It's just Hayden Hansen kind of guy, good play, different styles, but just in terms of good player, will give you what you need. He's not a liability out there, but he's never going to be a guy where the defense was never up at night thinking about how to cover Arla Sportingham.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I mean, the way the high school is, and we'll move on to something else I wanted to talk about. Like the way the high school game is now, the only teams that run true tight end sets or really 2 tight end sets are teams that are like in metro areas. Like if you go in Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, Miami, you're not going to really find teams like American Heritage doesn't usually run a tight end set, or St. Thomas Aquinas, or Chaminade Madonna, Cocoa. You know who does? Bradford, Baker County, Hawthorne, Madison County, all the teams that are in the rural areas.
The country schools.
Yeah, and I mean that's just how the game is. I remember I went to a coaching clinic where college coaches spoke, and I forget who it was. It might have been Steve Sarkisian. It wasn't Mike Norvell. It was one of the college coaches. And he was like, how many of y'all run a 2 tight end set? And like less than 5 people of like 200 plus coaches were in there said they ran 2 tight end sets. So, I mean, usually the evolution is high school runs something for a couple of years, and then college adapts it, and then college does something for a couple of years, and then the NFL adapts it. Because, I mean, like, for example, the fullback position, you don't see many teams in high school run it. You saw it taken away in college. Now you don't really see as much in the NFL. When the NFL was really the last league to run the fullback position, at least every team have it. I know a couple teams still have one, but
fullbacks now play tight end.
Yeah, for the most part.
For those watchers that are Jaguar fans, like Brenton Strange was a fullback in a past life.
Yeah, well, it's just insane because he's not a tight end. He's not a fullback build. Fullbacks are short, stocky, like Vontae Leach, Billy Lasso, to bring you back a name from the past.
Mike Allstott,
yeah, the guys like that.
Greg Jones.
You don't see tall, somewhat skinny fullbacks. That's just it ain't like that. So, all right, Graham. Over the weekend, I saw point spreads. So that I know this is real early, but I just wanted to get a feel for what the people in Vegas think about the Florida Gators. So if you look now, for the degenerates out there that are trying to get ahead of the season, Florida is projected to win 6.5 games this year. So if you like 6 games, you pick the under, but most Gator fans are very optimistic, and they think the over is going to hit. And so they put up the biggest games of the season for Florida, and they dropped 6 games. Graham, I want you to project these point spreads for me, if you will. Florida at LSU, week 3.
Florida at LSU because it's in Death Valley. I've already seen the kickoff is at night. LSU is favored in that game by 4.5.
7.5.
Wow.
Florida at Miami.
At Miami, right?
At Miami.
At Miami, that is Florida's only favored to win 6.5 games. So they're probably picking Miami in that game. That game is Miami minus 2.5.
Miami 5.5.
What?
Texas at Florida.
That's gonna be a bigger one. That's Texas 7.5.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Florida, Georgia. The last year it's in Jacksonville before they moved to Atlanta and Tampa.
That is Georgia 7.5.
Georgia 9.5.
I don't agree with that at all.
All right, then let me get good here. All right, Florida, Tennessee.
Florida, Tennessee. It's in Gainesville this year. Florida's going to be favored in that game, especially since the Nico stuff happened. That game is Florida minus 3.5.
2.5. Pretty close.
2.5, okay.
And then Florida State in Gainesville.
Florida in Gainesville. That's Florida 8.5.
10.5.
Okay.
LSU didn't surprise me. Miami shocked me.
It's like, what the hell?
5.5 points.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Favorite. This is just an early prediction.
I mean, did people watch Carson Beck last year?
I guess people are still of the opinion that he was a high recruit and he was the Heisman hopeful. He was the number one guy. He was projected to be the number one pick. And I don't know. I guess they're still hoping for that. But looking at this game early on, as we talk June 5th, and that game isn't until whatever, the third week in September, Miami's either going to win that game by 14 plus or Florida's going to win close, or like Miami's not going to win this game close. Cristobal, if you look at Miami's history with Cristobal in the last year or so, they do not win close games, regardless of who the team is. So looking at that line and saying 5.5, you're either saying Miami's going to win in a blowout or you see it going the other way.
Even if they did win close games after the Georgia Tech game from 2 years ago, you can never pick them to win a close game ever again for the rest of Mario Cristobal's career.
No, or the way they ended the season last year, the last couple of weeks, and then the Cheez-It Bowl. If you remember how that game ended, I know Cam Ward only played a drive or two and then went out, but it was like the way that game ended. It was a Pop-Tart Bowl. I said the Cheez-It Bowl. I apologize.
How dare you disrespect Pop-Tarts like that, Dylan?
Yeah. Speaking of bowl news, did you see the Bahamas Bowl is not going to be in the Bahamas this year? Big news.
That makes sense.
I forget. I saw it in Brett McMurphy's tweet. But anyway, yeah, those were a couple of lines that surprised me. So your boy is going to Colorado here in about 2 weeks, where you can bet on that. You can't bet that on Hard Rock yet. You can only do the over/under, and then who you think is going to win the title. Your boy's going to go to the casino, and if I'm up in the casino, I might put some money. I feel like the two spreads that I gave you, I would feel most confident in Florida plus 5.5 over Miami, and Florida plus 9.5 over Georgia. I think that Georgia line's insane. I mean, the way the two teams played last year, I mean, you're giving me a touchdown and almost a field goal. I mean, I feel like that's pretty easy.
So I don't disagree, but because that game was close. But didn't Georgia end up winning by 14 though?
Yeah, they scored late.
They scored kind of a garbage time touchdown to put it away. I guess maybe the thinking might be that Kirby hates Florida so much that he will always run up the score no matter what kind of thing. So if Georgia wins, if they really effectively win the game by 7, they're going to win by 10 plus. Maybe that's a thing. Because, if you watch that game last year, that was a 7-point game at most. But if you just look at the final score, it looks like Georgia won handily, which we obviously all, even Georgia fans would admit they didn't win that game handily. Maybe that, I mean, but that's even that's grasping at straws. I think Dylan, here's my prediction with that Georgia game, especially in the Texas game. This will show up as well, in my opinion. We'll see. Obviously we know what we think about. We know what we think about Billy Napier as a Saturday coach, and we've shared our feelings about that many, many, many times over the show. So if he completely falls on his face in that regard, he won't be the coach next year. So that's kind of a different part of the conversation. Giving him the benefit of the doubt and assuming that that's not going to happen, and assuming they're going to look like a well-coached team that's prepared, and they're going to look like more what they did in the back half of the year for most of the season. Because of the accumulation of talent they've been able to get, Dylan, you are going to see, and this has been kind of a slow progression over the last couple of years, you are going to see when they take the field against Georgia. You are going to see when they take the field against Texas, against some of these other teams. Florida is finally going to look like they belong on the same field in terms of the dudes wearing orange and blue are going to look similar to the dudes wearing red and black and burnt orange. They're going to look like similar athletes, and they're going to look like they can actually match these guys pound for pound. And all throughout the Dan Mullen years, that was never the case. Outside of the 1 year that you had Pitts doing his thing and Tony, outside of those years, or that year, I should say. I remember, Dylan, in 2022, the Georgia game of 2022, 23, sorry, so 2 years ago. Do you remember early in that game, Florida went up 7-0. Eugene Wilson caught a slant from Graham Mertz and took it to the house. Do you remember that play?
First drive of the game, yep.
First drive of the game. I just remember thinking in my mind when Eugene Wilson caught that pass and outran everybody. I remember I haven't seen a Florida player look like that against Georgia in forever. You know what I mean? Where you can tell he's just a superior athlete to the dudes trying to tackle him. I haven't seen that from a guy in orange and blue when they're playing in Jacksonville in forever. I think they're finally getting to where multiple dudes on the roster are starting to look like that in orange and blue, right? You can so see Dallas Wilson making a play like that. You can so see Vernell Brown III making a play like that. Jaden Ball. Obviously Lagway. And even last year with Mizell, people talk about how great of a throw Lagway put it on Mizell for that touchdown because it was a phenomenal throw. Aiden Mizell left some dudes in the dust, bro. Aiden Mizell got behind that deal. Like that dude can play too, especially the receivers, man. And you add some experience with J. Michael Sturdivant. And I think Florida's going to have one of the best offensive lines in the entire country with everything they're bringing back. It's just that I'm bringing all this stuff up, Dylan, to say that kind of how we began the show talking about recruiting. You're seeing some of the fruits of that labor from years past, the last year, 2 years, 3 years. I'm starting to feel confident that they can actually match up with some of these teams that eventually they're going to have to beat if they want to compete for college football playoffs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, with the point spreads, I mean, they look at recruiting the last couple of years. They look at the quarterback. They look at the head coach, and usually that goes to the other team that Florida's playing. Texas, check, check, check. Georgia, check, check, check. And then you factor, they're playing at LSU. LSU's at home at night. That factors in. So, yeah, I feel like this is the most optimism Florida's had in quite some time. I know Dan Mullen had optimism like in 2019, when they beat Auburn and then going to the 2020 year, even though 2020 was COVID and all that. And they had one of the most dynamic offenses, in Florida history. But this feels a little different because it's more complete and you feel like you can go toe to toe with almost anybody. And at least there is some legitimacy to Florida being in the playoff. It's not just it's not far-fetched. It's not just, hey, let's throw this out there for a June, July topic. It's, no, this is a real topic. The people that cover the sport actually believe that this could happen if X, Y, Z happen. And the only thing that you can hope now, the months of the summer, as we're here, is for the guys not to get in trouble. I don't know if you saw this the other day. There was a 17-year-old, his name wasn't identified first, but it just came out last night, Stephon Shivers. He was placed on house arrest following a felony charge. So I don't know what's going to come from this. If he's going to, if anything's going to come from, if he's going to not miss a game or, not be able to practice or anything. But those are things that you don't want to see the next 12 weeks. And that's Florida's second arrest this offseason for the ones that are keeping track at home.
Dijon Johnson thing turned out to be kind of a nothing burger, though.
Yeah, that was nothing.
The controlled substance was creatine.
Yeah. That is hysterical, man.
We're good.
Do you remember
we're fine.
who was it? I think it was someone in Georgia. And there was bird poop on the hood of the car, and the cop was detaining the player, and the cop thought it was cocaine. And the player is like, you got the body cam footage. The player's like, bro, that is bird poop. What are you talking about? He's like, I can't drive cocaine with 60 miles an hour. Cocaine still will be on the hood of my car. Oh, my God. That's hysterical, man. But, yeah, anywho. Every summer there's unrealistic optimism, the reality, things in college.
Howard wrote us a novel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I would still take. I believe the optimism this year, though. I believe Florida's going to get over 6.5 wins, and I think they'll be at 8 or 9. As long as DJ Lagway can be under center, and as long as they can be relatively healthy up front, I think Florida's going to have a good season this year. So,
Dylan, can I ask you an off-season question?
Off-season, go ahead.
When does the football bug hit you in the off-season?
Well, football never really stops for me.
No. You already misunderstood the question. Football never stops for you. I know you're coaching up the boys over at ball when you're getting them right. I get all that. That's fine. I'm talking watching ball. I'm talking. Gators and Jags, of course, as the local teams here, but I'm talking also, getting amped for some Wednesday night action. Buffalo at Northern Michigan.
I'll say middle of August.
Wow, that late?
Yeah. Well, I feel like it might hit me a little sooner, but I feel like I'm not like most people, and like I sit here and just like look at the calendar like dying for football to happen. Like I feel like I have things to do, like I want to do this summer, and then when August gets here, it's like, okay, let me, I really want to see this happen. It used to be, yeah, like June's here, like, dude, I'm starving for football, but now, nah. Like I'm looking at, I watch a lot of podcasts on my time off. I enjoy the time that I have before football season, because when football is here, man, you can't get enough of it, because you have football almost every day of the week. It seems like.
Yeah, and it's heaven.
Yeah, it is. But
like for me, Dylan, there's a very stark, because for some people it's kind of a gradual thing. For me, it's a very stark point in the calendar. It is the day after, or I should say like the weekend after, an NBA Finals champion is crowned.
So about 2 weeks.
Yeah, correct. You know how much I love hoops. Gator hoops, obviously, we covered that team this year for obvious reasons the entire year, and we covered them heavy. But even like I love the NBA too. Like I just love basketball. It's my second favorite sport after football. And whenever there's basketball on in front of me, I love to watch it, whether it's college or the NBA. And I'll be pretty locked in, and it kind of scratches that sports itch for me. We'll cover the Gators if it's relevant. I know not so much this year already, but normally like baseball if we need, but that's kind of touch and go. I'm not a baseball guy overall, admittedly. So normally once an NBA champion's crowned, I'm like, man, it even hit me. I know the finals haven't even started yet, but it even hit me a couple weekends ago. I was watching the Eastern Conference Finals with some homies that and it was a Saturday night, and we're sitting there watching the game. And we all love hoops, whatever. But I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, what I would do for this to be a college football Saturday instead of the NBA right now. Like I like the NBA, but what I would do this is the Eastern Conference Finals. I would rather a Week 5 Colorado-Kansas matchup right now.
Yeah, I'm not. Like last night, I watched a little bit of the Braves. They suck. And then I watched the end of the Texas Tech softball game. That was insane. The ending to that game. I don't know if you caught any of that.
I was watching some Stanley Cup final yesterday.
Okay, so yeah, I haven't watched any hockey, but I've been watching softball. I'll watch a little bit of baseball. The baseball has been excellent. I know like a lot of the top teams got knocked out last weekend. But like the endings to the game, it almost has that NFL red zone where it's like you're not going to have it this weekend because there's only 16 teams left. But there's so many games going on. You can like hop around to the end of the game, in the afternoon. So that's where I've been at right now. So I'll probably watch some softball tonight. I watch the finals tonight. Going to Denver in a couple weeks. And then just, I kind of detach, unplug for the next couple weekends, go golf on a Saturday or Sunday. I like watching a lot of comedians podcasts, like Shane Gillis and Andrew Schultz and Tim Dillon, and get a couple laughs, and then because I know once August gets here, man, it's Friday night I'm doing high school football. Saturday I'm watching college football for 12 hours. In the NFL I'm watching the NFL from 1 o'clock until whenever
football's over.
Yeah, until 10 o'clock, and that's from Labor Day all the way up until New Year's. That schedule. So yeah, I've enjoyed my time off, and that you have the golf major next week. I watched I watched way more golf than I did previously.
Yeah. Last thing here, and then I'll let you go because I know you got a show to do, and I got stuff to do too. When we started this podcast, you had never been on a plane.
Yeah.
Except for when you were like a baby or something.
Like an infant. Yep.
Now you're like world traveler Dylan. What's going on? You went to Philly last year. You're going to Colorado this year.
Yep.
You're all over the map, bro. Like what is it? Greece next?
No.
Like, what's going on?
I don't have a passport yet.
Okay.
Last summer
you've never had a passport, have you?
No.
Okay.
Last summer I went to Philly and Boston. Went to Philly for a track meet for the New Balance Nationals. Went to Boston for Fenway. Had a buddy who lived out there. And then the same buddy, Tanner, that who once lived in Boston. Now he lives in Denver. So I'm going to Denver because he lives out there. I'm going to watch a legendary comedian, David Tell. I don't know if you know who he is. He was pretty popular in New York in the 90s. He's pretty funny. Watch him Saturday night, and we'll watch the Dodgers Rockies. So I'll watch the best team in baseball play the worst team in baseball.
I was about to say, while you're out there, are you going to catch the Rockies? I hear they're great.
Yeah, they're excellent this year. The Rockies have more wins since June 2nd. They have more wins than Scotty Scheffler on the tour in majors.
And they have less wins than Scotty Scheffler.
No, well, they beat the Marlins in a series.
Oh, okay.
That was a joke on social media.
Yeah, okay.
Scotty's had more wins, golf wins this year than the Rockies, since whatever. And then they won the last couple, which is funny.
No,
and
Denver's awesome. I've been out there. It's sweet.
Yeah.
It's so weird, dude, because you'll are you staying with Tanner, I assume?
Yeah.
So it's so weird because you'll wake up, you'll be inside, and you'll check the temperature, and it'll say it's like 95 or something. And you're like, oh, it's going to be hot. But you're like, you and I, like, we're so used to Florida humidity. Dude, you'll walk outside, you'll be like, it's pretty nice. Like, it's not bad.
Yeah,
it's warm, obviously. It's not like it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have that humidity that we're so used to here, that like sticky, heavy feeling of the air. Like, that is just totally gone.
Dude,
so it's so weird how different it feels. Like,
I didn't know what
plus there is more pleasant than 86 here.
Yeah, I didn't know what non-humidity weather was like until I went to Philly last year. It was like almost 90 degrees in Philly and Boston last year, and I didn't even break a sweat.
It's such a weird feeling.
And even last year when I went to Boston, so I went to Boston. I mean, I always remember this. This is the last thing I say. Went to Fenway the same day Trump got shot the first time. It was on that Saturday, and I remember that day. It rained and then the sun came out. Now if that happened here, turn the oven on. Because you're about to melt.
Right. Yeah, it's basically a sauna with a lamp.
Yeah. There, like, you could feel the humidity just a little bit, like, in your hands, but like it was nothing comparable to what it is in Florida. Nothing comparable.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just fine. Like, my buddy Tanner, he was like, golly, it's humid. I said, bro, you've been away from Florida too long because it is not humid here at all. So, yeah, hope to have fun. I'll be out there for like 4 or 5 days. So
nice.
That'll be cool, bro. So, all right, Graham. We'll talk next week, and we'll talk about something about the Gators.
Yes, sir.
All right, peace.